Hi friends! Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be talking about today are some books that I've purchased that I've liked and that I've also some things that I didn't like about them, just to give you an idea of kind of where to start and what books might be good for you to start with. So as I go through, I'm going to talk about the knitting part first, and then I'm going to talk about some crochet books that I picked up recently. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to talk about, and I did look around and before I purchased this book, but this is called Vogue Knitting, and it's the ultimate knitting book. And so this book was one of my first books that I bought that when I wanted to learn how to knit. So I would suggest do your search, pick out what you would like. But I'm going to tell you what I liked about this book. Now, one thing I did like is that as you go through the front part of the book, it talks about different things that you might not realize about knitting, and they've kind of compiled it into one book. Like they talk about fibers, and then yarn supplies, and it just kind of lays it out so that if you are new or if you are teaching someone, you can point out like some facts about it or anything that you might be interested in. It also talks about like the gauge and of each yarn, which I really liked because I like to be new to knitting. So like it talks about the gauges and like the thickness of your yarn, which is really cool. And then it talks about different types of them, like fingering, sock fingering, baby, sport, DK, worsted, chunky, super bulky, and jumbo. They list it all out so that you know what they're talking about whenever you're looking at purchasing a yarn, maybe even online or in the store. You might not know exactly what that means. And like for example, like whenever I was first learning, I didn't quite understand what DK meant, but it is like a lightweight yarn, but it's still like thicker. That's what I've noticed about DK weight. It's still that kind of thickness, but it's like a lightweight one. It's not very heavy. So, and then like sport, all those different things, it kind of goes into detail on that. And I like to know what I'm doing. It also talks about the different types of fibers, which I thought was really great as a new knitter. I mean, I didn't sit down and like read this book in full, but it was a great like dictionary book. Like let's say I was working with a yarn, or I purchased a yarn as a new knitter and I thought, oh, this is really pretty. And then I look over on the back and most yarns say like, don't put it in the wash or don't dry it, all that stuff. But this book kind of goes into detail on the different types of fibers. And I think like, for example, it's mainly just all the different, they just kind of list out all the different types. Like you've got wool that's roving, and then you've got like alpaca. It talks about all of that. And I really like that as a new knitter to kind of go back. So whenever I was watching like a YouTube video, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get out my book. So this is kind of like, if you're going to start with something, start here, okay? Like the starter book. And it also talks about construction. I am one that will like get an idea or see a picture or something like that, and I'll just love the way it looks, and I'll just go with it. Like I'll try and make it up because I'm more of like the creator type knitter. I follow a pattern to an extent, but not really, like, I guess not really to the point where I'm following it to a T, right? Like I'll buy a pattern, but it's mainly so that I can get an idea of how the construction looks. This book teaches you how to construct different patterns and different designs, which I absolutely loved. Going through this as a new knitter, sometimes I didn't quite understand it, so I would look up the abbreviations on how to do it online. And this book, I think it should be in every knitter's library or one similar to it. And this is just the one that I found the most reviews on, so that's what I ended up picking up, is this particular book. Let me know if you have a different book that's kind of like the ultimate knitting book, which is considered like your guide to different things within the knitting world. So I would recommend this one or one similar to it, just so that as you are going through and learning how to do these techniques, like for example, like they give really good pictures of the actual knitted, knitted item, so you can see what it's supposed to look like, which I really like. I don't like seeing drawings as much in a book. I like to see the actual picture, but they do throw in drawings. The drawings are there to demonstrate how to perform the knit, or how to perform, the stitch. So, and it talks about the wrong side and right side. It's really laid out nicely. And it talks about also, it goes into constructing garments, which I thought was great. And they do a little bit with the graph pictures, showing the design. I am a math person, so the pictures with the graphs help me more than telling me what to do. I want to look at the graph, and then I'm going to read what it actually means. So, and I'll try and understand the graph first. So I really like it when they throw in that graph with the abbreviations of what type of stitch they're referring to. And this book kind of goes into a little bit of detail on that. Like, for example, whenever I'm making out my own patterns, I usually use graph paper to create it and to design it. And it goes through the circular, I guess the circular knitting method, which I don't know, that's how I learned how to knit, is in the round. So as soon as I saw this portion, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So this is going to show me the construction of a top down, or no, I'm sorry, bottom up construction of a sweater. And I've used this design on a lot of my sweaters that I've created for everybody in my family, pretty much, for the most part. And let me see. There's just so much in this book. There really is. It's just so much within this book that I've just always kind of gone to it to look up stuff, especially if I don't want to be on the internet for a little while. All right, so I definitely recommend it, or one like it. And if you have one that's similar to this book that you want to recommend, please comment in the chat. I love comments, okay? Whether they're giving me more information about fiber arts, but I love it, and I will try my very best to comment back, or to let you know that I've read it. Also, the next one that I purchased for knitting was a book on knitting stitches. So this one, I did get it online, but you can get it, I think Joann's carries it as well. But I love this book as well. There's some things that I wasn't real thrilled with, but overall it was a great addition to my knitting book textbooks. And I was going back and forth. You know how you see the number, you're like, ooh, that one has 500 knit stitches. Oh, but this one has 750. So you want to try to get the most. But then when you open it, you're like, well, wait a minute. Some of these are just kind of silly. Like, why would you put that in the book? But I mean, if it's different, they added it to the book. I do love the pictures in the book. It's really nice how they kind of throw in some different pictures throughout. Whenever they're doing the demonstration part, they do, draw it out, which is great. I like that. But then they also add in some really colorful designs within the book, like picture-wise. Now, I really, really like this because as a new knitter, it's hard for you to see what they're talking about. But if they add color, for some reason, for me, it was easy for me to understand what exactly they were talking about. And also, it was just visually appealing. I also really like the abbreviation part. I mean, I've been knitting for a while, not long. I would still consider myself a little bit of a novice when it comes to knitting, just because there's so much. You guys, there's so much about knitting. I mean, I would have to say I don't think everybody knows. I don't think there's one person that knows everything about knitting. I just can't picture that, because it's just infinite to me. There's so much you can learn. But I like the little abbreviation section, because what I would do, I would look at the pattern in the book, and then I would go look at the abbreviations, like as my key, and I'd go through and look at the stitches. But they start you with the very beginning. garter stitch, which I put a tutorial up on garter stitch. And then stockinette. This is exactly the way I would teach. Like we have a little fiber arts club at my school that I work at, and it's not anything real big, but some of the students have come and I've got supplies for them. So the first thing I would always teach, well, first of all, casting on, but the first stitch I would teach would be garter, and then we'd create some kind of scarf with it, and then we go to stockinette, where you're learning how to purl. So this is exactly what I would do. I would teach this first and then teach that. So I love that. And then the reverse stockinette, I mean, some of this stuff I'm just like, you just put that in there. You just put it in there so you could have the highest number. Because I don't know why you would want to use reverse stockinette unless you were creating. I know there was one sweater I purchased online that was really, really, really trendy last year. And I think it had drop stitches in the front where it created like this V. I cannot remember the name of the sweater. It was gorgeous though. And I have created the drop stitch, but I have not finished the sweater for it. Also, the next thing that I would do is the rib stitch. Would teach the kids how to do the rib stitch so that they could create hats, because that's kind of like the foundation. You got your rib stitch and your stockinette, or your garter stitch, you know, depending on what kind of design you want. And they've got some really cool, I like the herringbone one. I've tried that before. And then I really like the seed stitch and the bobble stitch. Those are ones that I gravitate towards. I made, and so this is where I got the idea, or got my, you know, the bobble stitch pattern was really, really, I really like it. And then they just have so many different designs with pictures. That's important. With the pictures, the actual picture of it. And I love it. Here's some homework in there for some of my students. And yeah, so it's a great book. I really like it. I wish they had more like graph patterns, like graphed. They do the graph whenever they're going through and doing the color work, which is really cool. I like graphs, like I said. One thing with color work, I've done a lot with color work. I made my husband a Christmas sweater with color work. I don't know where it is. I'm sure it's with the Christmas stuff. I'll have to show it in another video. But I really like color work. I think it adds some different things that, you know, that you can't purchase in the store. I think that's like the key. Color work, and then like creating some kind of a pattern within your sweater that's unique, or within your blanket or whatever you're creating. That's, I think, the color work, or, you know, using different textures is what adds to it. And so I really like that it's actually, this book is actually in color. And so if you are new to knitting, I would stock up on these two, or one similar to it. You need your book on all that information if you're going to start creating like patterns. This is the book that I use to create patterns of my own. And this book right here kind of gives me an idea of what kind of texture I want my garment or whatever I'm creating to look like. So one cute thing for the bubble stitch, or whatever you want to call it, I use it in amigurumis as their eyes sometimes. And you can have, for every knitting stitch, there's always like a comparable crochet stitch. That's what I've kind of learned too. All right, this is another book. So I would recommend getting these two, or one similar to it. So if you're new to knitting, pick up these two, and then you have all of what you need to do whatever you want. Okay, create, you know, whatever you want. And all right, the next thing that I'm gonna show you is a what to knit when you're expecting book. A friend of mine got this for me, so that this is after I had kids. I think she got it for me so that she was like, hey, you should make this for people like me, which a lot of people tend to do that, which is fine. It's fine. I was like, well, I'm not really expecting, but this is a super cute book, and it's great. They list out like all these techniques, and I really like it for the measurements with an infant. It goes to like the scales of it. And I'm sure there's other books out there like this. I really like this one because it shows the diagrams, but once again, you actually have the finished product, like a picture of it. And I know a lot, I mean, I don't know. I usually, when I go to like Goodwill, I'll always buy, and I've got some really old school books, but what I've noticed is that in the older books, there's no actual picture, and if there is, it's in black and white. And so I use some of the older books just to get some ideas for like, you know, for some of my designs, or just like inspiration on what I'm going to create. But this book, like I said, the newer books, you guys should always have color pictures. You should. One thing I would suggest that I wish more like yarny kind of companies would do whenever they're writing the books is make the spiral bound. I really like to be able to open it up and lay it flat and follow along. Or, you know, and it's really hard because they just kind of flop. I almost want to take this book apart and punch holes in it and put it in a notebook, because I want to be able to open it and leave it open. So I really wish book companies would maybe, if they're paperback, maybe do and offer a spiral bound. And I noticed a few of them do that, but not all. I would love spiral bound. So if you guys know of any books that, or any places that I can go get spiral bound done to it, it would really, it would benefit me. I don't know about y'all. Like, what do y'all think about that? But anyways, if you are going to be creating like gifts for people at baby showers, and I've done that a handful of times. I am one of like 24 cousins. Like, I have like so many nieces and nephews, and they're already starting to have kids and stuff. I am the oldest. I'm the oldest cousin, but there's still a lot. They're starting to have kids, and I love making them something that they can keep and maybe even pass on. So that's probably my why. Like, I would love to be able to have that item that they could keep, and they knew that, you know, oh, well, my cousin Heather made this for you when you were an infant and carried along. So this is one, if you don't get a book like it, get one similar to it, and it's what to knit when you're expecting. And it's just, it gives you some good measurements for infants. And this is one that I just use this one a lot just to look up the sizing, because I already have a basic idea of what I'm going to make. I just need to know what size an infant is sometimes. Okay, so this is my knitting like main books that are usually out on my desk, are these three. And also this swatch pad. I guess it's called a swatch pad. It's a measuring pad, I guess. These are really great, and I'm all about some deals, okay? And I got this for $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. They sell it in their like yarn section. It's the exact same one at Hobby Lobby. I mean, it's the exact same one, but it's like $1 something. And I'm a math teacher, so I bought a bunch of these, and I teach as well. So anyways, if you have a Dollar Tree close by, pick up these. Pick up just one. I picked up a bunch just because I knew I would use them. And I just like to carry this around because it fits right in my bag, my yarn bag. And I also have a nice journal. So what I would wish for journals, so these are my things that are always in my bag. What I do wish that journals would do for knitters, I wish that they would make one page be a line page. And there's probably companies that do this. I just don't, they're probably super expensive. I just wish they would flat out just do it for everything. But I really wish that companies that know that you're going to be using the book for knitting, or even for creating a garment, I wish one side would be lined and the other side would be graph paper. I wish they would just automatically do that, because even in sewing, you want to draw it out on graph paper to get, you know, your units of measure, your scale. I really do wish that they would do that. But this is just lined, and you can see, like, I'll start drawing little squares on my paper, but I really wish one side would be graph, because I'm always grabbing my graph book and this book, because I think this book is really cute, and I do like the fact that it's lined. But I really do wish one side was graph paper and the other side was lined paper. So when you opened it up, you could start writing your pattern, and graphing out your design. I wish. Okay, so these are my things that are, so this is my knitting, like, little suggestions. These are things that you need to build a strong knitting understanding. That's what I think. Okay, I may not be, maybe it's not what you think. All right, let me know in the chat if you've got your favorites. I love to hear different ideas, different books. I love suggestions on different books that you could use. Another thing that I really like too is I have different bags. My favorite bag though is the one that my grandmother used when she was knitting, and I'm going to show it to you. I love getting all of her old stuff, but this is my favorite. Okay, my favorite knitting bag, and it has like pockets, but it does this, and my kids love it, but it opens up and it has like metal. I've used this since I got handed down it, but I love this. She used it all the time. This is my knitting bag, and these are the things that go in my knitting bag for the most part. All right, thank you for coming to my channel. Please subscribe, like the video, comment down below, and thank you for joining me.